Before the story starts, like, subscribe, and share if you love emotional twists. Now answer this: if you walked into your own home and your child looked safer with a stranger than with you, what would you do? Malcolm Reed didn't come home often. He told himself it was sacrifice. That it was love in a suit and a private jet. That the late nights, the contracts, the board meetings every single mile away from home was a brick in the future he was building for his son. But the truth was simpler and uglier. Malcolm Reed had mastered money. And completely failed at presents. The black SUV rolled through the iron gates of Reed Manor like it owned the air itself. The driver didn't speak. The security guard snapped to attention. The house, huge, quiet, beautiful, waited like a museum exhibit labeled success. Malcolm checked his watch. He hadn't even told anyone he was coming. That was the point. He wanted the surprise. He wanted to walk in and hear his son's footsteps running toward him, hear that small voice shout, "Dad," like it meant something. Malcolm imagined the moment like a commercial. Warm lighting. Happy tears. Redemption in a hallway. Instead, he stepped through the front door and heard nothing. No laughter. No television. No piano practice. No shouting. Not even the echo of a child's presence. Just a soft, steady rhythm. A voice, gentle, low, patient, floating from somewhere deeper in the house. Malcolm frowned. The housekeeper, Mrs. Granger, was supposed to be off today. The chef had quit last month. The staff had been rotated so many times Malcolm couldn't remember names, only roles. He followed the sound. Past the marble staircase. Past the portrait wall where his father stared down in oil paint like a judge. Past the hallway where his son's room sat, door half open, light spilling out. The voice came again, clearer now. "Okay, breathe with me. In, 2, 3. Out, 2, 3. Malcolm stopped at the kitchen entrance, and the scene hit him like a punch. His son, Oliver, 9 years old, small for his age, wearing socks with tiny rockets, sat on the kitchen floor. Not at the table. Not on a chair. On the floor, pressed close to a woman Malcolm had never seen before. She was black, maybe late 20s, hair wrapped in a simple head scarf, wearing a plain gray uniform. No jewelry. No dramatic makeup. Just calm eyes and a posture that didn't perform. Oliver's hands were gripping her sleeve like it was a lifeline. His cheek rested against her shoulder. And the woman, this new maid, was quietly guiding his breathing, one palm placed over his back with a patience that looked practiced. A glass lay shattered near the counter. A small puddle of spilled juice spread under the fridge light. And Oliver's face, Malcolm's only son, was damp with tears. Malcolm's first emotion wasn't concern. It was shock. His second was rage, because it felt like someone had stolen something that belonged to him. "What is going on?" Malcolm's voice cracked through the kitchen like a door slamming. The woman didn't jump. Oliver did. Oliver's head snapped up, eyes wide, and the grip on her sleeve tightened so hard the fabric pulled. For 1 second Malcolm thought his son would stand and run toward him. Instead, Oliver pressed closer to the maid and whispered, trembling, Don't make her go." Those 6 words cut deeper than any insult Malcolm had heard in a boardroom. The woman finally looked up at Malcolm. Not disrespectfully. Not fearfully. Just, directly. "Mr. Reed," she said, like she already knew his face without needing to be told. He had a panic episode. The glass breaking startled him. Malcolm stared at her as if she'd explained the weather. A panic episode? His son had never had panic episodes. Except. Malcolm realized with a cold twist in his stomach. He wouldn't know. He hadn't been home long enough to notice what his child's patterns even were. Oliver's breathing was still uneven. His small chest rose and fell too fast. His eyes stayed locked on Malcolm like Malcolm was a stranger holding authority. Malcolm forced himself to step forward. "Oliver. Buddy. It's me." Oliver's lower lip shook. Then he said something that didn't sound like Oliver at all. "You're loud." Malcolm froze. The maid spoke softly. He's sensitive to sudden sounds when he's already overwhelmed. Malcolm didn't like how she said it. Like she'd been here long enough to know his child's invisible edges. "Who are you?" Malcolm demanded. The woman stood slowly, careful not to startle Oliver. She rose with calm control, like she'd learned what chaos did to children. "My name is Nia," she said. "I started today." "Started today," Malcolm repeated sharply, eyes narrowing. "And on your first day my son is on the floor holding you like you're his mother," Malcolm thought, but didn't say. Because saying it would make it real. Oliver's hand slipped from Nia's sleeve only when she gently guided it away, like unhooking a child from a cliff edge. Nia spoke to Oliver first, not Malcolm. "I'm going to stand here. You're okay. You're safe." Oliver nodded, but he didn't look safe. He looked like someone had been surviving and didn't want the one person who helped him survive to disappear. Malcolm's voice dropped, sharp. "Where is Mrs. Granger?" Nia glanced toward the back door. "She left early. She said she had an emergency." Malcolm's jaw clenched. His staff quitting, leaving, rotating, he'd written it off as normal. People came and went. But Oliver didn't. Oliver stayed. And now Oliver was attached to the newest person in his home. Malcolm pointed at the broken glass. "Why was my son near that?" Nia didn't flinch. He wanted to pour his own juice. He was trying to do it himself. Malcolm snapped, "He's 9. He doesn't need to be pouring." Nia's voice remained calm, but her words landed like a mirror. He wanted to feel capable. Malcolm hated that answer because it sounded right. He hated it more because it wasn't his voice saying it. Oliver whispered again, smaller this time, "Dad, please." Malcolm's chest tightened. He hadn't heard Oliver plead in years. When Oliver was younger, he used to ask for bedtime stories. He used to ask Malcolm to play with his toy planes. The asking had stopped. Somewhere along the way, the silence had become normal. Malcolm swallowed. His eyes flicked to Nia. "You can go. I've got it." Oliver's face crumpled instantly, fear spiking so fast it was visible. Nia took one step closer, not to Malcolm, but to Oliver, and spoke gently. "Oliver. Look at me." Oliver obeyed. Nia continued, "I'm not leaving you. I'm right here." Malcolm's stomach sank. Because Oliver believed her. Malcolm didn't know how to make his son believe him anymore. And then Malcolm noticed something he hadn't at first. On the kitchen counter, next to a small notebook, was a paper with Oliver's handwriting, messy, uneven letters. "Nia makes the noises quiet." Malcolm's throat went dry. Something was happening in his house. Something important. And Malcolm had been away too long to understand it. He forced his voice steady. "Oliver, why are you scared?" Oliver's eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward the front of the house, toward the big rooms that felt like emptiness. Then he whispered the thing that would haunt Malcolm for the rest of the night. "Because you always leave." The kitchen lights suddenly felt too bright. And Malcolm Reed, millionaire, investor, unstoppable force in every room he entered, stood powerless in his own home. Watching his child cling to a stranger for safety. And realizing the villain wasn't a person. It was the life he'd built. Malcolm didn't sleep. He tried. He lay in the master bedroom with a ceiling so high it felt like a cathedral built to worship loneliness. The sheets were expensive. The silence was priceless. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Oliver on the kitchen floor, holding on to Nia like she was oxygen. At 5:17 a.m., Malcolm went downstairs. Not in a suit. Not on a call. Just as a man who suddenly didn't know his own child. He found Nia in the kitchen again, washing dishes quietly. The broken glass was gone. The counter was clean. The floor shined. Order restored. Like nothing had happened. But Malcolm could still feel it. "You're early," Malcolm said. Nia glanced up. "Oliver wakes up early." "How do you know that?" Malcolm asked too quickly. Nia didn't bite. "He told me yesterday. He said mornings are easier." Malcolm's jaw tightened. "He doesn't talk to strangers like that." Nia's hands kept moving in the sink. "He talks to people who listen." It wasn't said with attitude. It was said like truth. Malcolm stepped closer. "Who hired you?" "Mrs. Granger," Nia replied. "She said the agency sent my profile over." "She interviewed me." Malcolm frowned. "No one clears hires without me." Nia dried her hands calmly. "Then someone made a decision because they thought Oliver needed stability." That word, stability, felt like an accusation. Malcolm lowered his voice. "Look. I don't know what you think you saw yesterday, but..." Nia cut in gently. "I saw a child in distress. And I helped him regulate." Malcolm hated how professional she sounded. Like she'd done this before. Like she was trained. "What are you, exactly?" Malcolm asked. Nia paused, and for the first time her expression shifted only slightly. "I'm someone who needed work," she said. "And someone who understands kids." Malcolm didn't like that the answer was both human and guarded. He moved to the fridge, poured himself water. His hands were steadier when he had something to hold. "Oliver has never had panic episodes," Malcolm said. Nia's eyes met his. "Oliver has had them. You haven't been here." The words were gentle, but they hit like a hammer. Malcolm swallowed hard, voice rougher now. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Nia hesitated. "Did anyone try?" Malcolm looked away. He pictured the unread emails. The missed calls he'd silenced during meetings. The voicemails he'd told himself he'd listen to later. Later never came. A soft sound from the hallway interrupted them, small footsteps. Oliver appeared in the doorway wearing a hoodie too big for him, hair messy, eyes cautious. He didn't run to Malcolm. He looked at Malcolm like Malcolm was a weather forecast, unpredictable. Oliver's eyes moved to Nia. His shoulders dropped a fraction, relief visible. Malcolm's chest tightened. Nia knelt slightly, lowering herself to Oliver's level without making it dramatic. "Morning, rocket socks," she said softly. Oliver's lips twitched, almost a smile. Malcolm couldn't remember the last time he'd made that expression happen. Oliver's eyes stayed on Nia. "Are you still here?" Nia nodded. "I'm still here." Oliver inhaled like that answered a question his body had been asking all night. Malcolm stepped forward, forcing softness into his voice. "Hey, champ. I'm home for a while." Oliver stared. "How long is a while?" Malcolm hesitated. That single pause betrayed him. Oliver's face tightened. Nia spoke gently, "We can take today first." Oliver nodded like today was all he could handle. And Malcolm realized, his son didn't trust promises. He trusted patterns. Today first. Malcolm cleared his throat. "Oliver, do you want breakfast with me?" Oliver looked at Malcolm, then at Nia. Like he needed permission from the person he trusted. That destroyed Malcolm. Oliver whispered, "Can Nia stay?" Malcolm's pride screamed to say no. His heart screamed louder. He forced the words out, "Yes. She can stay." Oliver's shoulders released another inch. And Malcolm felt like he'd just signed a contract he didn't understand. They ate breakfast with a strange tension, like three people sharing the same room but living in different worlds. Oliver barely spoke. But he was calmer when Nia sat nearby, not too close, not too far, like she understood his comfort distance. Malcolm tried to talk the way dads in movies talk. "So, school's going okay?" Oliver's fork paused. "You don't know my teacher's name." Malcolm blinked. Of course I. Oliver cut him off, voice small but firm. You don't. Silence. Nia didn't rescue him. She didn't soften it. She let Malcolm sit with what he'd earned. Malcolm swallowed his pride. You're right, he said quietly. I don't. Will you tell me? Oliver looked surprised. Not that Malcolm didn't know. That Malcolm admitted it. Oliver's voice stayed cautious. Ms. Klein. Malcolm nodded, storing it like a priceless detail. Then Oliver spoke again, unexpected. Ms. Klein says I'm brave. Malcolm looked at him. She's right. Oliver shrugged slightly. Nia says brave is when you feel scared and still breathe. Nia smiled softly but didn't make it a performance. Malcolm's throat tightened. His son was learning emotional tools from the maid. Not from him. After breakfast, Oliver went to the living room with a puzzle book. Nia started cleaning quietly. Malcolm stopped her. What happened before you came? With Oliver. Nia hesitated. Then she spoke carefully, like someone handling glass. He told me he doesn't like when the house gets quiet. It makes him feel like he's floating. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. Floating? Nia nodded. Like he's not anchored. Malcolm felt a cold wave of guilt. He had built a mansion and left his son without an anchor. Nia continued, he also said he hears adults argue sometimes. Not here. On the phone. Mrs. Granger and other staff. They worry about the house being sold. Malcolm stiffened. Sold? Nia watched his face. I thought you knew. Malcolm didn't. But suddenly, it clicked. The staff leaving. The emergency hires. The tension. Someone had been making decisions without him. He pulled out his phone, opened his email, and found a legal chain buried in unread messages. A note from his father's old attorney. A document attached. Estate restructuring. Disputed trust. Emergency transfer clauses. Malcolm's breath caught. His father had died 2 years ago. Malcolm had inherited the business, the property, the fortune. But the trust had conditions. Malcolm remembered that much. What he hadn't remembered, because he'd never bothered to read the fine print, was that the house itself was tied to a stability clause for Oliver. A clause that could be triggered if Malcolm was deemed absent and unfit to provide direct care. Malcolm's fingers went cold around his phone. Someone was trying to take his home. No worse. Someone was trying to take his son's home. And then the real twist surfaced like a shark fin in still water. The disputed trust complaint wasn't filed by an enemy company. It was filed by his father's sister, Aunt Lorraine. Aunt Lorraine, who had always smiled too hard at family dinners. Aunt Lorraine, who had always called Oliver sweet boy like she was shopping for him. Malcolm's voice turned low. When did Lorraine come here? Nia answered without drama. She visited last week. Twice. Malcolm's eyes snapped to her. Why didn't anyone tell me? Nia's voice stayed calm. Did anyone have access to you? Malcolm felt like the house itself was judging him now. He looked toward the living room. Oliver was sitting quietly, head down, solving a puzzle. So small in such a big house. Malcolm whispered, What did Lorraine do? Nia's mouth tightened. She asked Oliver questions. What kind of questions? Nia took a breath. If he feels safe. If he feels alone. If he wishes he lived somewhere else. Malcolm's chest tightened like a fist. Those weren't questions. Those were traps. Malcolm stepped closer, voice rising despite himself. Why didn't you stop her? Nia's eyes didn't flinch. I wasn't here yet. Malcolm froze. Right. This started before Nia. Nia wasn't the villain. She was the light that had exposed how dark things had gotten. Malcolm's voice dropped. I need you to tell me everything Oliver tells you. Nia's face changed, finally. Not anger. Not fear. Boundaries. I will tell you what keeps him safe, she said. But I won't break his trust to ease your guilt. Malcolm's pride flared. This is my house. My son. Nia held his gaze. Then be his father. Not his owner. The words landed like a slap. Not because they were rude. Because they were true. A sound came from the living room. Oliver's pencil snapped. He flinched. His breathing sped up. Nia moved first, instantly, quietly, kneeling beside him. Oliver, she said softly. Look at me. Count with me. Oliver's eyes locked on hers. His breathing slowed. Malcolm stood there, useless again. And in that moment Malcolm understood the real villain wasn't Lorraine. It was the fact that Malcolm's son had learned to self-soothe without him, because Malcolm had never been there to soothe him in the first place. So Malcolm made a decision that scared him more than any deal ever had. He sat down on the carpet on the floor beside his son. Not towering. Not commanding. Just present. Oliver glanced at him, uncertain. Malcolm spoke quietly, voice rough. Can you teach me the counting thing? Oliver blinked. Nia stayed silent, watching. Oliver whispered, It's 4. Malcolm nodded. Okay. Teach me. And for the first time in years, Malcolm Reed wasn't chasing money. He was chasing a chance. Lorraine arrived on a Thursday afternoon like she owned the driveway. Her car was polished, her clothes expensive in that old family way, her smile sharp enough to slice bread. She walked into the house without waiting for permission. Malcolm, she called, voice bright and fake. Darling, I heard you were home. Malcolm stepped into the foyer, calm on the outside, storm on the inside. He'd spent the week reading every page of the trust documents. He'd made calls. He'd hired attorneys. He'd done the one thing he always did well. He prepared for war. But this war wasn't about profit margins. It was about a child. Lorraine's eyes scanned him quickly, then moved past him. Where's my sweet Oliver? She asked, already walking forward. Malcolm blocked her path. You're not seeing him today. Lorraine blinked, offended. Excuse me? Malcolm's voice stayed controlled. You've been asking him questions that are inappropriate. Lorraine laughed like it was cute. Malcolm, I'm family. I'm concerned. That child is alone in this enormous house while you're gallivanting around the world. Malcolm felt the old trigger: anger, defensiveness, pride. But then he heard Oliver's small footsteps behind him. Oliver had come to see what the noise was. Nia stood a few feet away in the hallway, not hovering, not hiding, just present. Oliver's eyes locked on Lorraine, and his shoulders tightened. Lorraine softened her face instantly, crouching with practiced sweetness. There's my boy, she cooed. Did you miss Auntie Lorraine? Oliver didn't answer. Lorraine's smile twitched. She glanced at Nia, noticing her fully for the first time. And who is this? Lorraine asked, tone changing like a switch. Malcolm's voice stayed firm. That's Nia. She works here. Lorraine's eyes narrowed slightly. Oh. I see. Nia didn't react. Lorraine stood, brushing imaginary dust off her sleeve. Malcolm, may I speak with you privately? Malcolm didn't move. Say what you need to say here. Lorraine's smile tightened. Fine. I'm filing an emergency petition to evaluate Oliver's living environment. Oliver flinched at the word evaluate. Malcolm saw it. Lorraine continued, this house is unfit for a child if the parent is absent. The trust is clear. If you can't provide direct care, the property and custodial decisions revert to the designated family guardian. Malcolm's voice sharpened. You're trying to take my son. Lorraine gasped theatrically. I'm trying to protect him. From neglect. The word neglect hung in the air like smoke. Oliver's breathing sped up. Nia didn't rush him this time. Because Malcolm moved first. He knelt beside Oliver. "Hey," Malcolm said softly. "Breathe with me." Oliver stared at him, shocked. Malcolm counted quietly, 2, 3, 4. Oliver hesitated, then matched the rhythm. Lorraine's eyes widened just a fraction. Malcolm looked up at her from the floor, still counting, still steady. And out, 2, 3, 4. Oliver's shoulders eased. Nia's expression softened just slightly. Lorraine recovered fast. "So now you breathe with him for 5 seconds and suddenly you're father of the year?" Malcolm stood slowly. "No. I'm a father who finally showed up." Lorraine scoffed. "Showed up for a week. You'll disappear again. You always do." That was the dangerous part of her attack. It wasn't totally false. Malcolm didn't deny it. He turned to Oliver, not Lorraine. "Oliver," Malcolm said gently, "I made a promise before and I broke it. You don't have to trust my words. You can watch my actions." Oliver's eyes searched Malcolm's face like a scientist searching for evidence. Lorraine leaned in, voice lower, poisonous. "Sweetheart, wouldn't you rather live somewhere quieter? Somewhere smaller? Somewhere you won't be scared all the time?" Oliver's hands clenched. Malcolm's voice snapped. "Stop manipulating him." Lorraine smiled. "It's not manipulation if it's true. That child is anxious because of this house and your absence. The trust exists for a reason." Malcolm took a breath. Then he did something that would have shocked every executive who'd ever negotiated with him. He told the truth out loud. "You're right about one thing," Malcolm said. "Oliver has been anxious. And I caused that." Lorraine's eyebrows lifted. "Oh?" Malcolm continued, voice steady. "But you're wrong if you think you get to profit from my mistake." Lorraine's eyes hardened. "Profit? Don't be crude." Malcolm stepped closer. "You don't want Oliver. You want control of the estate. You want the property. You want the story, I saved the child from his careless father." Lorraine laughed coldly. "How dare you?" Nia finally spoke, calm and clear. "I'm sorry," she said, not to Lorraine, just into the room. "But Oliver has told me he doesn't feel safe when strangers ask him leading questions." Lorraine's head snapped toward her, eyes narrowing. "And who are you to speak in this family matter?" Nia's voice remained level. "I'm the person who has been here. The person who has watched him shake when adults raise their voices. The person who has helped him breathe through fear." Lorraine's smile turned sharp. "So you're the new savior? How convenient." Malcolm saw the play immediately. Lorraine was trying to turn Nia into the villain. Because if Lorraine could paint Nia as interfering, she could make a case that the environment was unstable. Malcolm stepped between them, between Lorraine's power and Nia's position. "You're done here," Malcolm said. Lorraine's eyes flashed. "You can't remove family." Malcolm's voice was ice. "Security can." Lorraine's face twisted, then smoothed again, calculating. Before leaving, she crouched one last time toward Oliver, voice dripping sweetness. "Sweet boy, if you ever want to live somewhere you don't have to be scared, you tell me, okay?" Oliver stared at her. Then, quietly, he said something that made the room go still. "I'm not scared because of the house." Lorraine blinked. "Oh?" Oliver's voice shook, but he kept going. "I'm scared because people leave. And then they come back and pretend nothing happened." Malcolm felt his throat tighten. Oliver looked at Malcolm, eyes glossy. "But Dad is trying now." Lorraine's smile froze. "Because a child's honesty is the one thing money can't argue with." Lorraine stood abruptly, mask cracking. "This isn't over." Malcolm didn't blink. "It is." Security escorted her out. The house fell quiet again. But this time the quiet wasn't emptiness. It was space. Space for something new. Malcolm turned to Nia. His voice softened. "Thank you." Nia didn't smile like she'd won. She didn't act superior. She just nodded. "He deserves consistency." Malcolm swallowed. "So do you." Nia's eyes met his. "Then don't make me the only consistent person in his life." That was the hardest truth yet. Malcolm walked to Oliver, kneeling again like it was becoming natural. "Oliver," he said softly, "I have a meeting tomorrow." Oliver's face tightened instantly, fear reflex. Malcolm raised a hand quickly. "Listen. It's in the city. I'll be back before dinner. And I want you to help me plan what we do after." Oliver hesitated. "Plan?" Malcolm nodded. "You pick. We make a schedule. And I follow it." Oliver stared at him, testing the words. Then Oliver whispered, "No phone?" Malcolm smiled sadly. "No phone." Oliver looked at Nia. Nia nodded slightly, like this is the right direction. Oliver finally said, "Okay." Malcolm's eyes stung. Because okay from Oliver felt like a miracle. That evening, Malcolm did something he'd never done in this house. He sat at the kitchen table, not with a laptop, but with a piece of paper. He wrote, "Read House Rules, Oliver Edition." Oliver watched cautiously. Malcolm handed him the marker. "You write the rules." Oliver's eyes widened. "Me?" Malcolm nodded. "Yeah. You." Oliver started slowly, carefully. "No yelling in the kitchen. If Dad leaves, Dad says exactly when he comes back. If I feel scared, I can say quiet corner and nobody argues. Nia stays, but Dad also stays." Malcolm stared at Rule 4 until his vision blurred. He nodded. "Deal." Nia watched from the doorway, expression soft but serious. This wasn't a movie ending. It wasn't instant healing. It was something rarer. A rich man finally learning that love isn't what you provide. It's what you stay for. And as the kitchen lights warmed the room, Oliver leaned his head, just slightly, against Malcolm's arm. Not clinging. Not desperate. Just trusting enough to rest. Malcolm didn't move. He didn't want to break the moment. Because he finally understood. The most expensive thing he'd ever bought wasn't the house. It was the time he'd wasted. And he was done paying that price. Comment bait ending. Now tell me honestly, do you think Malcolm deserves a second chance, or did he realize too late?